Welcome to this explainer. Listen, I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're jumping right into something that touches literally every single one of us. No matter who you are or how meticulously organized you think your life is, there's this one universal human struggle we all face. Unexpected life shifts. Change doesn't ask for permission. It just shows up. Maybe it's a sudden breakup that leaves you reeling, or a layoff you never saw coming, or maybe it's a massive global event that turns the whole world upside down. Whether it arrives quietly or all at once, it's coming. So today, we're unpacking a brilliant ancient toolkit designed specifically to help us not just survive these chaotic shifts, but actually thrive right in the middle of them.
Which really begs the question, why do we fear the inevitable? Why on earth do we spend so much of our precious energy clinging to this illusion of permanence? It's a fascinating psychological contradiction, really. Logically, we totally know that the single greatest constant of history is that everything changes. We know seasons shift, economies fluctuate, people grow. But emotionally? Man, we fiercely resist it. We treat change like this uninvited intruder breaking into our lives, when in reality, it's stitched into the very fabric of existence. We're basically fighting a war against reality itself, and spoiler alert, that is a war we will always, inevitably, lose.
The ancient philosopher Heraclitus hit the nail right on the head when he noted everything changes and nothing stands still. He famously pointed out that you can literally never step in the same river twice, right? Because the water has moved on, so it's not the same river, and frankly, you're not the exact same person either. This concept is just so foundational. Think about it. Without change, we couldn't grow, we couldn't develop, or even form meaningful relationships. We wouldn't feel pride in our accomplishments, fall in love, or honestly even find the motivation to get out of bed in the morning. A universe without change simply cannot exist because change is a strict physical requirement for the formation of absolutely anything new. Then a few centuries later, the philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius took this a whole step further. He viewed change not as a threat to our comfort, but as a completely necessary and entirely neutral force of nature. He famously wrote, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." Now just imagine the radical paradigm shift required to truly believe that. Imagine looking at the loss of a job, a move to a new city, or some unexpected life pivot, not as this targeted tragedy designed to ruin your life, but as the universe just doing what it was designed to do. It completely transforms the world from a hostile environment into this dynamic, flowing ecosystem. But if that's true, why is this so hard for us? Just understanding that change is natural doesn't magically stop it from feeling incredibly uncomfortable. Well, the answer actually lies in our biology. We naturally resist change because predictable routines just feel so incredibly safe to our nervous systems. From an evolutionary standpoint, our brains desperately want to keep their habits to reduce stress and save vital cognitive energy. Familiarity is just the path of least resistance. So when your daily routine is suddenly threatened, you are thrust right into the vast unknown. Your brain sounds the alarm and suddenly has to work overtime, burning a tremendous amount of energy just to figure out a new balance. And because of that intense biological discomfort, we tend to do something pretty self-destructive. As Seneca brilliantly points out, we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Because we have this built-in aversion to suffering, we just start catastrophizing. Take a super relatable modern example. You get an ambiguously worded email from your boss saying, "Hey, we need to talk." Boom. Before the meeting even happens, your brain assumes you're fired, you're going to lose your house, and you'll end up totally destitute. We run these worst-case scenarios on a constant loop, creating this massive amount of real, visceral misery over things that haven't even happened yet. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding exactly how this suffering operates. The Orion philosophy framework breaks this down into two very distinct phases of resistance. On one side, we have the anticipation of future change. This is that paralyzing anxiety of a shifting routine or a looming loss, just the absolute dread of what might go wrong tomorrow. Then on the flip side, we have the reaction to a past change. This is the deep depression of reeling from a recent loss, where you feel entirely lost and unmoored in the chaos of a new, unbalanced reality. Both are super heavy forms of resistance, and honestly, as long as we hold on to them, finding peace is just off the table. So how do we fix that internal narrative? Well, the Stoics offer a pretty radical shift in perspective. As Epictetus argued, it isn't the things themselves that disturb people, but the judgments they form about them. It's not the job loss, it's not the relocation, it's not the shifting relationship that inherently hurts us. It's our internal perception of that event. Think about rain on a wedding day. To one person, it's a devastating tragedy that completely ruins the photos. But to someone else, it's a beautiful, romantic memory. The event itself, the rain, is entirely neutral. It's our judgment that tags it as good or bad. That internal narrative is the real hidden source of all our distress. To actually manage those judgments successfully, we have to lean on the first major tool of Stoicism, the dichotomy of control. As human beings, let's face it, we love the feeling of control. It's intoxicating. It gives us this profound sense of comfort and superiority. But the Stoics figured out really early on that most of our control is actually a complete illusion. And that illusion is exactly what sets us up for immense pain. The tighter we grip the steering wheel of life and the deeper we buy into that illusion of total control, the more intensely we suffer when the universe inevitably proves to us that, hey, we are not actually the ones in charge here.
Let's methodically unpack how you actually apply this. Epictetus gives us a super exact breakdown of what we absolutely must take responsibility for versus what we just have to let go of. We only control our thoughts, our opinions, and our own actions. Literally, that is it. Everything else, your property, your reputation, what other people do, is ultimately outside your total command. For example, you can act with absolute perfect integrity at your job, which you entirely control, but some jealous coworker can still spread a rumor and ruin your reputation, which you do not control. Recognizing this is just incredibly freeing. When change forces our hand, we have to identify those external events, let them go, and focus all our energy purely on our own choices.
Let me set the scene with a historical anecdote to show you what this level of focus actually looks like in practice. There was this highly respected Stoic statesman named Marcus Aurelius, living right in the middle of the 1st century AD. He lived under the wildly unstable and tyrannical Emperor Nero. And back in those days, drawing the emperor's ire wasn't just a minor setback for your career. It usually meant a gruesome execution, or at very best, having your entire life, wealth, and status completely stripped away. Well, one day, completely out of the blue, Agrippinus was told his case was being tried in the Senate. He finishes his daily exercise, and then he gets the devastating news. He has been condemned to exile.
So upon hearing this completely life-shattering news, he simply looks at the messenger and asks if his property was also confiscated. They tell him no. And without missing a single beat, he replies, "Well then, let us go to Aricia and take our lunch there." I mean, wow, that is an absolute masterclass in the dichotomy of control. The Senate's corrupt decision was an external event totally beyond his power. So instead of suffering in imagination, throwing a massive tantrum, or fighting the inevitable reality of his exile, he perfectly practiced accepting what was beyond his control. He just looked at the situation and decided what his very next action would be, which was eating lunch.
Agrippinus was able to act with such incredible calm because he had fully mastered the second Stoic pillar, rethinking expectations. The cold, hard reality is that the universe does not rearrange itself based on our personal thoughts and feelings. There's this massive friction between our internal desires and the universe's complete and utter indifference to them. Expecting reality to bend to our will is a direct one-way ticket to suffering. If we walk around expecting our lives to be completely fair or entirely free from challenges, or if we expect people to always act exactly the way we want them to, well, our expectations are going to constantly be unmet, and that just leaves us perpetually frustrated and disappointed.
So, if you are ever struggling to ground your unrealistic expectations, you have to use this incredible ego check from Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. He urges us to consider the lives lived long ago and all the ones that will be lived long after we're gone. Just seriously consider how many people walking the earth right now don't even know your name. Now, viewing our lives through this massive cosmic lens isn't meant to be depressing or nihilistic. It is immensely liberating. It frees us from the intense, suffocating pressure of expecting a static, perfect life. When we remember our relatively tiny place in the grand tapestry of time, accepting these inevitable changes becomes so much easier.
Which brings us to the final and honestly perhaps the most vital pillar of all, the power of acceptance. Now, it is incredibly important here to distinguish true Stoic acceptance from just passive resignation. Acceptance does not mean giving up, rolling over, and just letting bad things happen to you. Not at all. It means clearly acknowledging reality for exactly what it is so you can actually take effective action. Acceptance underlies both control and expectation. When we finally stop fighting against the shift and start moving with it, that's when we find peace in the present. We stop wasting all our precious energy trying to avoid adversity, and instead we use that exact energy to adapt.
Just consider the absolutely fascinating story of Diogenes of Sinope. He faced a massive, completely unexpected change in circumstance. Much like Agrippinus, he was forced into exile. He lost his home, his money, his citizenship, the whole shebang. Now, if he had bitterly resisted this change, he probably would have lived a miserable, obscure life. But instead, he accepted his new reality. That exact change forced him to relocate to Athens, where he completely reinvented himself. This pivot led directly to him founding the Cynic school of philosophy, ultimately becoming one of the most famous thinkers in human history.
A change that initially looked like a total disaster actually changed his life and, frankly, the entire course of philosophy for the better. And this leads us to the ultimate Stoic goal. We're not talking about just surviving change here. We're not just begrudgingly tolerating it. We're talking about amorpha fati, a true love of one's fate. This is the practice of actively embracing whatever happens as both necessary and natural. But how do you actually, practically, love your fate? Well, it means looking at a flat tire on the way to work, or a terribly delayed flight, and instead of raging, you just say, "Good, I needed this. I needed a moment of patience today. I needed a chance to test my resilience." It is intentionally deciding to become stronger in the face of adversity by welcoming the unending cycle of the universe. So I really want to leave you with this one question to chew on. What change are you resisting right now? Think about that specific area of your life where you are digging your heels in against the inevitable. What would it actually look like if you applied this ancient toolkit today? What would it feel like to meet that specific change with trust and curiosity rather than all that tension and anxiety? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I highly encourage you to carry this question with you as you navigate whatever shift comes your way next. Because remember, change isn't in your way, it is the way.